Hey, what's up everyone? Morey Croson here from the Performance Lab of California, and I wanted to do another breakdown for you today. Again, we're putting a big focus on middle distance as the District Track Club Clinic is fast approaching. It's going to be this weekend, Sunday. It's going to be this Sunday. And so if you're in the East Coast area, Maryland, anywhere like that, go ahead and check that out. So in the breakdown here, we'll just go ahead and hop right into it. What I want to do is show me or what my very rudimentary running form looks like in comparison to Farah and what his running form looks like, and really put a big focus on the part of the actual running phase is called the swing phase, and that's the time that your foot is spent off the ground, the non-weight bearing phase of the run. So we could see it would be this leg right here on this one, and it would be that one for Mo Farah. We're kind of zoomed in here. I went for a while to try to figure out when would be the best time to actually, get a Mo Farah angle, and this looks like it's a pretty good one in terms of being able to get the side. There's a lot of different views that we get, but this is one of the best ones that we actually get from his side angle, and it's with about 4 laps left here in the 5,000 meter run. So let's go and hop right into the analysis. So one of the big things that stands out to me is when we could see that the actual stride, and I'm going to go back a little bit here, the actual stride when he pushes off, how much better he gets into extension in his full overall leg, right? So I'm a little bit tighter in my hamstrings. I don't get into as much full extension. And then there's different parts of the actual swing phase that are important, right? And so what those are, just to break them down real quick, and that says swing phase. I know I have terrible writing. It's max knee flexion, it's max hip flexion, and it's knee extension, right? And then it ends on foot contact, but that's when we initially get into the stance phase, which would be when your foot is actually on the ground. That's when foot contact starts. So that's when we're out of swing phases once we get into foot contact. But the knee extension happens right before foot contact, so I think it's an important part to put down. So if we watch me here, we can see where my max knee flexion is, which is probably about right there in terms of how high I get my heel kind of up to my butt, and what I'm doing as I'm beginning my hip flexion, right? So my knee doesn't get into much more range other than in this right here, in comparison to what we see with Mo Farah, where his max knee flexion, I know you can't see it great here, but it's probably just like that. So I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more so you can see his leg is like that, where my leg is like that, right? So a very, very significant difference in terms of angle of the actual leg when we're talking about max knee flexion. Now, this is something that I see very, very commonly within top runners, right? Top middle distance or long distance runners that they do a very, very good job of is they create a lot of max knee flexion during their swing phase, okay? And this is something that is a little bit easier for, I know, myself to do when I'm going into a top end speed run, when I'm trying to run as fast as I can, but as I'm trying to just do more of an endurance type of run, now I don't do as good of a job getting my heel up to my butt in my actual running, and a lot of that has to do because of what I'm assuming to be tightness in the quads, and also some weakness in my upper hamstring in comparison to what like Mo Farah would have, somebody that's a really good distance runner. Here's another step here where you could see how much more overall knee flexion he's achieving in each one of his steps. And you can see the further back that we go, you get a little bit better angle and how close he gets that heel up to his butt. Now the next part is going to be going into max hip flexion. So now we'll go with Mo Farah first. So this would probably be max hip flexion here, how high he gets that leg up, right? And so now we'll go into my max hip flexion. Boom. I'll actually do that here. Oop, didn't mean to clear it. Okay, and so you can see the difference in really the angles of the shins, and that's where it's really important here is when you're going into that max hip flexion, you want to be able to have a similar angle that you do to your back leg. At least that's what a lot of those top middle distance runners have. So you can see where mine is, right, in that, we're going to do it. Mine is kind of there, right, and then where, in comparison to what my max hip flexion angle is, which is more here. So I'm a little bit more upright with that shin at my max hip flexion angle in comparison to Mo Farah, where he's very, very even with his back leg in comparison to his front shin angle, which is going to allow him to get overall a more set himself up for landing underneath himself a little bit better. So we'll see me where I go into knee extension and I land a little bit more in front of myself here, right? So this is where I go into, so I'm in max hip flexion, and then I go into knee extension there. Very, very little in terms of what I get in knee extension. Where then we'll see Mo Farah, much better job of getting knee extension there, right? You can see how far out his leg is in front of him and how straight his leg is in front of him, right? Where I'm still staying stuck in the angle. And the point of this video too is just to show, I figured I better show some rudimentary running, right? Somebody that is not very experienced, that isn't competing at a Olympic level, it isn't able to, run with some of these top sprinters, because a lot, the reality is there's a lot more people that are going to be in my shoes in comparison to one of the best long distance runner of all time, in his shoes, right? So to see what he does very, very well, he does a great job of getting into a very good angle within his shins when he's in that max hip flexion angle, and then he does a great job of getting full extension when he transitions into knee extension. So now when he transitions to foot contact, he's able to land with his foot a lot more underneath him. And you can also see how his overall force is. Now, granted, I'm on a treadmill, so in a curved treadmill, so using the curved treadmill, you have to put a little bit more force in pushing backwards, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for me, but still you could just see the difference, and it's a great learning tool anyway, where you can see where he's pulling himself underneath, and when he lands, he does a great job of one, landing with his foot right underneath him, but also going into a large amount of knee flexion, right, bending of the knee, and almost allows himself to go downwards, right? So you can see his overall height. Look where he's at here, and then as he lands, watch him sink down. See that? See how high he is, and then he really sinks down really, really low. So he does a great job of absorbing his force. His energy is going downward here, or you could see me. And again, this is something that we really try to teach a lot more of the sprinters, is that you want to make your cycle much more like this, right? Because we're working on trying to move the body as fast as it can over a short period of time. So it's not going to be as efficient for a long period of time. It's going to be more geared up for short-term speed, right? And so by really pulling my leg back here, I'm going to be able to maximize my speed that much more. Okay, so you can see I'm pulling back. So when I'm touching, I'm not getting into as much. I'm not sinking down as much, and my leg is in much more of a force of pulling my leg back, where his is a lot more on pushing himself down, which allows himself to really get a lot of overall vertical force when he's pushing off, where I'm going to go and not get as much overall vertical force when I'm pushing off. I'm going to be going and extending and then getting a little bit more of a horizontal force. Now, in both short-term sprinting or fast sprinting and long-term sprinting, this seems to be a lot more overall efficient in being able to maximize speed. Okay, so if by me getting a little bit too horizontal, I'm really negatively working for both short distance as well as for long distance. And the reason that I'm not pushing off as well or getting more horizontal is because I'm transitioning into more of a long distance run, right? So when you go long distance, now you're going to have a longer foot contact time, you're going to have a longer stride distance, a longer transition time spent off the ground, right? And so by me having a longer foot contact time, but really landing in a similar position with my foot underneath me, now all of my additional foot contact time happens with my leg back behind me. So I'm not used to, from here, pushing off and getting, first of all, I'm not used to pushing off in this position, generally. I try to make it so my push off happens as soon as my foot crosses back behind my hip when it comes to short distance running. So by me being so far back behind, that's going to limit my ability to get my foot up and my heel up, which makes it so I don't get into as good of a knee flexion angle, where he does a great job of transitioning here, pushing off that back leg and having that foot so far back behind him, but still having the time to be able to get his heel all the way up to his butt. And that's just because he does such a great job being able to push off the ground and getting that vertical force, right? Look at how well he sinks in, he absorbs his load, and then he pushes off very, very well. So he's getting very, very good vertical force, allows him plenty of time to be able to cycle that leg, get that heel up to his butt, get to a very, very good knee flexion angle, and then be able to push back off and continue a high force of a or a high stride frequency overall, right? So we could look at that again. He lands. He does a very good job of landing with his foot fairly well underneath him, right? His foot's all the way out here, and it's maybe 6 inches, 8 inches off the ground, but he pulls his leg, bends his knee to make it so he lands. That's where he actually lands, boom, with his foot right underneath him there. Really, really good landing. And then from there, transitions, goes into a pretty good amount of knee flexion, transitions, pushes off much more effectively than I do. Look at where he's pushing off. He's pushing off with his leg when his foot is right behind his butt, which is what I was kind of talking about before. So he's pushing off, getting through that full extension, and then by going through that full extension and getting a lot of vertical force, now he could pull that foot all the way back up, going to get into very good max knee flexion there. Okay, now because he's getting into such good knee flexion, now he could also get into a really good angle for when he gets into max hip flexion. Boom. So now we're looking at his comparison from this leg and that leg, both very good angles. Now when he goes into max knee extension, boom, now he's in a really good position to be able to maximize his stride length, right? Because he's fully extending that knee and then landing right back underneath him. Just such a beautiful cycle where, again, you could see me where I do a pretty good job of getting my knee up, but by comparison of my angles with my shins, right, this shin is much more vertical, where this one's much more horizontal, okay? And then when I go into my max knee extension, I really don't get full knee extension. I don't get my leg out as far in front of me, so now I'm not going to be able to pick up as much stride length. And then when I land with my foot a little bit more out in front of me, right? And I'm not spending as much time through my absorption phase. And then when I begin my push off, see right here is really where I should be beginning to push off and getting more vertical in my run and make it so now I can have a little bit more of an efficient turnover. But I'm really not doing a very good job of getting a very good efficient turnover. My left side's even worse in terms of how high I get my foot. So I really don't get a good knee flexion angle at all on my left side. So, we talk about each one of my steps. Why is Mo Farah able to maintain a, somewhere between like a 420 and 430 mile over such a long period of time? It's because he's able to maximize efficiency. I can maybe run, 1 mile right now at about 5:30, right? And that's just because I'm not nearly as efficient. My body isn't built for it as well. You can see how much the difference in the anatomies. I'm a lot thicker in through here, right? I'm a lot thicker on obviously my upper body, where Mo Farah is definitely a lot more set up for an endurance run, which is important as well, right? If you're talking about what's going to maximize overall results, we also got to talk about, what is your body fat ratio? How much, body fat do you have overall? Because that's going to be very, very important when it comes to overall performance. If you're looking more like me and you want to be able to get times like him, you're going to have to end up figuring out how you, from a nutrition standpoint, you're going to have to look more like him and, have that leanness and, ability to have a lot more lean muscle, right? We'll be able to work a lot more aerobically, where I'm working a lot more in my ATP and anaerobic zone. So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of differences that go into this, but big point of the video really wants to be about the swing phase, right? All that time spent off of the ground, the foot spent off the ground. What is happening when we're going into those max knee flexion angles, max hip flexion angles, and knee extension phase. All right. Hope this makes sense for you guys. If you have any questions, would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can go ahead and reach out to me. We have a lot of different programs. We have different breakdowns for you guys. We have a lot of different material that we do for people that are looking to get faster, middle distance, short distance. Those are what we're primarily focusing on right now. So if you have any questions, 40-yard dash, and a lot of you guys are getting into the off season, so you might be looking to get your top end speed that much faster, and we'll be able to help you out a lot more with that. So if you guys have any questions, let us know, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. Hey, what's up everyone? Morey Croson here. Don't forget to subscribe below to get weekly videos about running mechanics, throwing mechanics, videos about how you can lift correctly, exercises, a wide variety of different things that could help you in performing better and just becoming an overall better athlete.